Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about Night School Studios' Oxenfree, a spooky adventure game with a storytelling focus. But is Night School's title a solid study in gaming, or is it more likely to test your patience? The premise to Oxenfree is more or less a combination of a coming-of-age story with some supernatural creepiness blended in for good measure. A group of teens head over to an island for a beach party, and during the course of some somewhat awkward interactions, become distracted by a local urban legend, including spooky ghosts, or radios, or something, which turn out to be a lot less of a legend and a bit more of a pressing matter that's both ominous and threatening. And honestly, I really liked it. I didn't know what to expect when I went into Oxenfree the first time around, but the peculiarities of its story frequently made me think of the Twilight Zone. I was genuinely curious to know more about the unsettling elements of the island, and there were plenty of optional bits of story to discover which only made those questions a bit more prominent. That said, it wasn't just the spooky elements that was a striking element of the narrative for me. I was rather taken with the way it handled dialogue, as it gave the option to maintain conversations while exploring, and also acknowledged when I didn't answer, or when I interrupted. It was also super neat to discover that these exchanges led to the friendships with the other characters growing better, or arguably worse over time, in turn influencing the ultimate outcome of the game. At least to a certain degree. I'll also admit a rather keen fondness just for the way that the NG Plus of the game acknowledges the player's familiarity with certain story elements and also provides certain opportunities for messing with the way things pan out to boot. It was just altogether a stroke of brilliance. Now, whilst I say that Oxenfree is an adventure game, it's not overly complex in a mechanical sense. There are puzzles to be solved, but a number of them more or less hinge on finding or interacting with certain objects, and talking with your compatriots / would-be slasher victims in any other genre. Still, if you're absolutely hankering for things to do, and the promise of a solid story and a number of permutations aren't enough, it is notable that some of the way things turn out varies depending on who you bring along when you go to resolve certain dilemmas, and there are certain secrets which you can unearth. Now, these tend to involve the game's radio tuning mechanic thing, which is exactly what it says on the tin. Not that badgering spooky spirits with your radio has ever gone poorly for you by this point. Nope.
You'll know. Trust me.
Now, there's genuinely a lot that I like in regards to Oxenfree on the audio front, whether it's the quality of the voice work for the protagonists or just the uncanniness of the radio when it's played. I found myself happy to discover new and different voice lines as I went through the game's NG+. The OST is also lovely to listen to, as it manages to alternate between mellow and playful moments to creepy and just pensive and peaceful, and it just fits so well with the various moments in the game. And on the aesthetic front, I really appreciate Oxenfree. It's got a pretty distinct appearance that's fairly pleasing to the eye. I genuinely enjoyed meandering across the island and seeing more of the environments. And also, some of the creepier moments were definitely in part to what was on the screen, sometimes in juxtaposition to just how disarming things appeared a few moments prior. With all this said, I adore Oxenfree. It was a clever and intelligently written adventure that gave me more than enough reason to run through it multiple times, to see the different ways conversations and interactions could pan out. Discovering the finer details about the plot was excellent as well, and the twists that cropped up in the story were genuinely compelling to me. Plus, I found myself really getting into the bits of side story and hidden kernels of information the game had. For that reason, I'd definitely consider this a crit hit, especially since I've spent like a fair amount of time gushing to friends in real life about how this was a spiffy game and also very accessible. Like, even if you're bad at games, you should still be able to enjoy Oxenfree, so that's saying something. with all that said, that's a wrap, so I'd like to thank you folks for both tuning in and sticking till the end of the video. Whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts, I'd love to hear from you folks in the comments, and for those interested in more indie reviews or interviews with the developers, feel free to hit the subscribe button and, the bell icon to get notified when we have a new release. Lastly, join our Discord. There's a link in the description and in the banner, because Lovi will murder me if I don't remind you folks, and honestly, then you can become a part of our community. It's really cozy and reassuring and warm, and I'm not saying this just because Lovi will kill me if I don't. Anywho, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks. See ya. Error.